The GPU market has become absolutely boring. There's really no other way of putting it, and when we look at the behavior of the big players in this industry and where they have their attention, it's quite obvious that PC gamers are just a mere thought in the back of their minds. Whether it's pushing cloud gaming, AI initiatives, or other high-margin ventures, it feels like we're no longer their primary focus. Considering that and what we have on the market now, with these new generations coming later this year, I'm not feeling very optimistic, or should I say excited.
Data processing consumes the vast majority of cloud spend today. All of it should be accelerated. AI was all about perception. We have 100 million GeForce RTX AI PCs in the world.
But in our work together is giving rise to the AI era. You know, and when I think about this AI era, I consider it like the internet 25 years ago. So Diana, what do we have here?
All right, so I thought we'd do a quick demo of that AI appliance that you mentioned.
Okay.
So this is running on Xeon and Gaudi 2.
AMD is uniquely positioned to power the end-to-end infrastructure that will define the AI computing era. From massive cloud servers and enterprise clusters to the next generation of AI-enabled intelligent embedded devices, and Canon has adopted Versal to power the AI-based free viewpoint video system.
Hey, if you enjoy content like this, drop a like, make sure to subscribe, and smash that bell so you never miss another video. Hey, what is going on, guys? Danny here, welcome back to the channel, and I hope you've all been doing well. I want to show you guys a review for a graphics card from September 26, 2014, published by AnandTech for the GTX 970, nearly a decade ago, which is pretty crazy to say because it really doesn't feel like that much time has passed. Anyways, what I wanted to highlight for you guys was their conclusion they had at the time for this GPU. Despite not even being Nvidia's flagship GM204 card, the GTX 970 is still fast enough to race the R9 290X to a dead heat. At 1440p, the GTX 970 averages just 1% faster than the R9 290X. Only at 4K can AMD's flagship pull ahead, and even then the situation becomes reversed entirely in Nvidia's favor at 1080p. With the GTX 970, Nvidia only ties the R9 290X, but in the process they do so while consuming nearly 90 watts less power, generating far less heat, and more importantly delivering all of this at 2/3 the cost. The GTX 970 is an excellent alternative. By pricing the card at $329, Nvidia has done a great job of making a significant fraction of GM204's performance available at a better price. And for this reason, GTX 970 stands at a very good chance of being the value champion for this generation. Reading a review like that at the time was exciting for someone such as myself, who was still in school and didn't have a lot of disposable income. But I presume this wasn't just the case for someone such as myself, but everyone within the PC gaming community was excited. Getting a mid-range card where mid-range at the time was considered around $300 to $350, and trading blows with an enthusiast card from the previous generation at a fraction of the price. This was what PC gamers would look forward to upon a new generational release. Over at Tech Power Up, this is what they had to say about the 970. The GTX 970's real kicker is definitely its pricing. Reference boards can be found at an incredible $329, with EVGA's overclocked GTX 970 SE retailing at $339, a very reasonable price increase. This makes the card cheaper than AMD's R9 290X and R9 290, and both are slower, draw more power, and produce more noise. Personally, I would have expected the GTX 970 to retail for well above $400, matching the GTX 780's current pricing, but it looks as though Nvidia is looking to torpedo AMD's whole product stack, and I say they did so successfully. Then almost 2 years later, with the release of AMD's RX 480 based on Polaris, reviewers had this to say. Guru 3D on their review mentioned the following: anyone looking for an affordable upgrade to a wide Quad HD capable graphics card coming from say a 280/380, well, this card series will offer killer value for the money. If you are in need of an upgrade right now, for roughly $200 you get a product that competes with Radeon R9 390 and GeForce GTX 970 or 980 performance levels while being DX12 compatible and offering all the new hip display connector features as well. It will be interesting to see how Nvidia is going to adapt to this rather brutal release. At this time, we see prices for the GeForce GTX 970 dropping towards €284, and yesterday, all of a sudden, that GeForce GTX 1060 photo appeared. Interesting times. We also can't forget about the high-end enthusiast segment at the time, which, all things considered today, will appear like an absolute bargain. Tom's Hardware on their GTX 1080 Ti review said the following: Nvidia's GeForce GTX 1080 Ti Founders Edition simultaneously ascends the throne as a new performance king and extends Titan X class performance to gamers for $500 less. There is a lot to like if you want to enjoy your favorite games on a 4K monitor with a fast refresh Quad HD display or in virtual reality. The Tom's Hardware team debated where the GeForce GTX 1080 Ti might land. $800 sounded cheap. $900 would have even been reasonable. Given the card's theoretical similarities to the Titan X at $1,200, nobody suggested that Nvidia might replace the GTX 1080 altogether at $700. A $700 GeForce GTX 1080 Ti makes a $1,200 Titan X look pretty ridiculous. The Titan's only advantage is an extra 1GB of GDDR5X, after all, so it'll either need to go away or drop in price significantly. Looking back on this, and I'm having one of those moments now where you don't truly realize how good of a time you had until it's actually gone. For a while, we lived in a moment where reviewers and hardware enthusiasts would speculate much higher prices for upcoming releases from GPU manufacturers, sometimes speculating prices several hundreds of dollars higher than what it would actually cost. Nvidia themselves had undercut their own flagship Titan graphics card just 6 months later with another GPU that cost $500 less. And I remember this had actually riled up some large reviewers and tech tubers at the time the wrong way. I won't name who, but I remember some people were legitimately pissed off how Nvidia slapped them in the face with a significant price cut. Furthermore, as a result, one of the best selling high-end GPUs, the GTX 1080, had also received a price cut since it was replaced by the 1080 Ti at its original MSRP of $699. The Nvidia we know today would never indulge in that. I mean, sure, we had an RTX 4080 Super come in at $1,000, undercutting the original 4080 by $200, but we're also talking about a plus 2% increase in performance, and for a GPU that was egregiously priced to begin with. Whereas people were talking about the 1080 Ti being $900, they weren't talking as if that would be too unreasonable or expensive for them, but more so that's what they actually expected based on the performance. And what's even crazier was how Nvidia at the time did this while having no real competition in the high end. Nowadays, we discuss how Nvidia would never release a true high-end graphics card at an affordable price due to the lack of competition. But at that time, we were all still waiting for AMD's RX Vega because they only had the RX 480, which targeted the mainstream and entry-level segments. So they gave these aggressive price cuts without any real competition. When you would read reviews like the one from Tom's for the 1080 Ti, that would bring a lot of excitement, whether you're someone who was an avid gamer looking to play the latest games, or you're more into the hardware tuning aspect of the hobby. The YouTube space was fun because people would be showcasing all sorts of builds that were actually within reach for the vast majority of gamers. Now, let's fast forward to 2024, and here's what Tech Power Up mentioned in their RTX 4070 Super review. For AMD versus Nvidia, the situation is similar. DLSS 3 is the green team's biggest selling point. Super adds more performance on top of that at quote-unquote close enough pricing, which aligns with Nvidia's pricing strategy, betting that this is something many people still desire. Still, the current GPU market as a whole is far from affordable or tempting. It seems that AMD is happy with the current situation in which they follow Nvidia's pricing, undercutting them only slightly, no price war in sight. Given RTX 4070 Super's positioning and performance, and the lower price of the RTX 4070 non-Super, I suspect that AMD will adjust their pricing for RX 7800 XT a bit. And they're just talking about the mid-range market, which, funnily enough, at that price bracket we saw was held by the high-end not too long ago, but things I feel like get worse in the mainstream and entry-level market. With TechSpot's review of the RX 7600 XT, here's what they had to say. Without question, having 16GB of VRAM at your disposal is better than 8GB. However, the Navi 33 GPU isn't super powerful, so you're less likely to run at resolutions and quality settings that will saturate an 8GB buffer. We think a $60 premium for an extra 8GB of VRAM is reasonable, but the starting price is problematic. When we reviewed the Radeon RX 7600 about 8 months ago, we stated it should cost no more than $230, and we stand by that assessment. Our hope was that the 16GB version would price match the RTX 4060, effectively eliminating the GeForce competition at that price point. However, at $330, it's a rather expensive entry-level GPU, and one could argue that the previous gen Radeon 6700 XT, priced around $340, is a better deal. It doesn't significantly challenge the RTX 4060 either, which remains a viable option, offering offering similar performance and value with generally better ray tracing performance. The Radeon RX 7600 XT is another frustrating release from AMD as they narrowly missed the mark again. So this is where we are sitting at. In the time span of a decade, we went from the GPU market being quite exciting, where we saw awesome generational leaps at the same price brackets we were accustomed to prior. We even saw price cuts or price wars. We saw manufacturers undercutting each other, and this resulted in the consumer having some great options on the market, delivering really good bang for the buck. Now it seems like reviewers have to really search deep to pick out something positive to say about these modern GPUs. It's like you are grasping at straws, such as, well, the RTX 4070 finally got a $50 price cut, so I guess that's fine, or the RTX 4060 Ti now has 16 gigabytes at least, while in reality it's like strapping a twin turbo to a base Corolla. Talking about building a gaming PC was fun and exciting. Showcasing builds on YouTube was also fun because there was a genuine interest since people could actually afford the products. Nowadays, there's quite a bit of negativity involved in the comment sections, I've noticed, and that's because people are just turned off by the high prices along with the minuscule performance improvements. 170 class owners would happily wait for a new gen card because they got previous gen flagship performance at that mid-range price, i.e. 1070 versus 980 Ti. And I also don't want to sound like someone who's out of touch with reality and ignore the other factors which have caused this, such as inflation and the surge in pricing for materials, along with things like political factors with tariffs involved, especially over the last few years where it's been obscenely rampant. It's affecting other industries as well. According to Car Cost Canada, a 2017 Honda Civic LX, which is a pretty basic trim here, had an MSRP of around $20,000, and now a 2025 Civic LX will run you about $27,000 to $28,000. So prices for products and services over these last few years especially have gone up significantly, and for many of them I'd argue they have actually outpaced the rate of inflation, but that's modern day late stage capitalism for you. Because of this, consumer fatigue is real. The constant release of new models with minor improvements can lead to a sense of exhaustion amongst consumers, coupled with economic factors like inflation and increased cost of living. Many gamers simply just don't have that same disposable income to justify upgrading to the latest GPU, especially when the performance gains don't seem to warrant the expense. On my previous video where I talked about how old GPUs were lasting longer for gamers, I saw so many comments of people stating that they were still using their GPUs from the 10 series, 900 series, or using an RX 580 or Vega 56 because they just were not incentivized by these new performance advancements. It also doesn't help when the quote-unquote deals aren't anything spectacular, and when there is a considerable discount, I don't see feedback of people being ecstatic. Rather, they're just not really fazed because that was the price they had expected the card to launch at in the first place. If you go onto Newegg and look up prices for an RTX 4060, which has an official MSRP of $299, you'll see prices haven't come down at all despite this GPU being over a year old and getting poor reception. On the contrary, you can look at a card like the 7900 XT, which has come down in price relative to its original MSRP, but people aren't really praising it at its current price point. They're just saying that, yeah, it's great that it came down in price, but this is actually what we had expected this card to launch at in the first place, so being this price now nearly 2 years later, it's not really that impressive. And back when we had the 900 series or AMD's RX 400 series, I was seeing some crazy discounts on cards at that 1 year mark, even before that actually. Another avenue people used to look for when the new market wasn't really up to their expectation was the used market. As a new generation would come by and performance improvements were substantial, you'd be able to get some really sweet deals and great bang for your buck on previous gen stuff. But because the performance improvements are so minimal that previous gen high-end cards are still retaining good value. As a seller, this is good, but as a buyer, it's not. If the 60 class would match an RTX 3080 like previous gen 60 class cards did, then we'd be seeing the 3080 sell for less than $300. But if you go onto a site like eBay, they're still hovering around that $400 to $500 mark, which is where they were a year ago when I had made a used card pricing overview video. So it also stagnated the used market. Even an RTX 3070, which outperforms a 4060, is selling for over $300 used. We're talking about an almost 4-year-old card, and it's still retaining like 60 to 70% of its original value. Again, it's great if you're a seller, but it sucks if you're the one who's buying on a budget and thought that maybe the used market would save you. Speaking of the 30 series, we're still dealing with the remnants of the rise in cryptocurrency mining, as it had a significant impact on the GPU market. During the mining boom, GPUs were snapped up in mass, leading to shortages and inflated pricing. Even though the mining craze has subsided, the repercussions are actually still felt today. GPU manufacturers seem to have capitalized on the inflated pricing structures that emerged during that period, and prices haven't normalized to pre-mining boom levels, leaving gamers more frustrated. I felt like if the mining boom hadn't happened, the 30 series would have gone down as like the last good generation, because MSRP wise, I thought they were fine except for maybe like the 3090, though that was a niche product anyway. And now the focus has shifted onto the next big thing, from the big players like Nvidia, AMD, and even Intel. If you were watching the coverage from Computex last month, you probably saw this term plastered everywhere in places that it didn't even belong, and that's AI.
Can you just tell me a little bit about how the landscape of computing is changing, and how do you see AI?
Yes, Lisa. AI PC will be one of the most disruptive innovations of our lifetime.
Their attention has increasingly turned towards AI and cloud computing, rather than catering primarily to the gaming community. Initiatives like AI-driven Nvidia DLSS technology, while impressive, don't necessarily translate to the kind of raw performance improvements gamers used to look forward to. This shift has left many traditional PC gamers feeling sidelined, as the primary focus seems to be moving away from gaming-specific advancements to broader tech initiatives. There's also a growing disconnect between marketing hype and actual performance gains. Manufacturers often tout new features and minor improvements as game-changing, but in reality, the tangible benefits to the average gamer can be minimal. The overpromise and under-deliver approach can lead to disillusionment and a lack of trust in new releases. With the GPU market being so dead and boring in the lower end and mid-range segments, this has allowed for the emergence of other types of devices to take the spotlight, such as handhelds and mini-gaming PCs. And while they're not full-on replacements for a discrete GPU solution, at the rate which GPU prices have been increasing, this has also led gamers in the mainstream market to turn towards these other solutions, and as things are getting more advanced, they're becoming quite capable, hence the popularity of something like a Steam Deck plus other advantages like being able to game anywhere. So the folks who are gradually finding themselves priced out, they're now looking for alternatives, with mini PCs or handhelds being one of them, or you can just play older titles. There's still plenty of great games out there that I haven't tried from years ago, and I know they'd run just fine without any problems, even on an RX 480. As of now, it's hard to remain optimistic of the future. If you're wondering what's needed to rekindle excitement in the GPU market, several changes could be beneficial. More competitive pricing, where we saw manufacturers engage in a price war, significant generational leaps in performance that'd entice users to upgrade, along with a renewed focus on the gaming community, where we don't feel like we're just getting some derivative scraps from the AI research done for the data center, would all be helpful. But I'd also like to hear your thoughts on the matter as well. What would make you excited about new GPU releases again, or how has the current state of the GPU market affected your gaming or upgrading plans? As for now, that is going to do it for this one. We're going to touch base in the next video. If you guys found this video to be informative and entertaining, then leave a like. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below. Be sure to check out the video description for cool links and ways to support the channel, such as using my Amazon affiliate link. And if you're interested in seeing more content like this, then consider subscribing. I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.